This is the brand new DJI Air 3S. DJI sent me this drone to review, and I figured what better way to review a drone than to take two extremely rare and beautiful Porsche 911s out at sunset for a photo shoot. The main feature of the DJI Air 3S is that they've brought back the 1-inch sensor to this drone. It's got a 50 megapixel 1-inch CMOS sensor for the 24mm focal length with a fixed aperture of f1.8. Now, if you've ever done any drone photography or videography before, you know that this wide focal length is incredible for landscapes and really anything that you want to do with drone photography, and this thing is sharp. And having that 1-inch sensor gives us a ton of information, and specifically in low light scenarios, this is going to be really important. And with this 50 megapixel sensor with photography, it shoots incredible photos, as you can see here. And because you're able to shoot JPEG and RAW, I found no issues with retaining information in these photos. They're so beautiful. In video mode, you're equipped with 10-bit D-Log M mode, which to me is exactly what you need as a videographer in order to really retain the color depth that you want and those 14 stops of dynamic range. You're really able to pull out the colors. In seasons like fall here in Canada, being able to bring out those colors was crucial and is beautiful. As you guys can see in this footage, it really does a great job of bringing back the lush depth of those colors that if you're using maybe just 8-bit, it's a little bit harder to retain those colors or push the highs and lows around. So having that color depth in this drone really does kind of push it more towards the professional side rather than the consumer side. As well, in video mode, you can shoot 4K 60 frames per second. So if you want that buttery smooth footage, you can do that, which is quite impressive. As well, in video, you're getting a ton of dynamic range with 14 stops of dynamic range. Now, this shot here is kind of the one that wowed me in that we have incredible details in the back and we can see the dark parts of the forest in front. Additionally, we have a second lens on this camera, which kind of, quite frankly, blew my mind. I haven't flown any of the drones that have multiple lenses on it, and I thought it'd possibly be a bit gimmicky, but when I was out shooting with this, I found this to be one of the most fun drone shoots that I've ever done. Having a semi-telephoto 70mm lens flying in the sky was a ton of fun. Of course, we can shoot those wide landscapes with any of the drones that we have, but having the ability to focus on the subject was super impressive. I was having a ton of fun switching over to the 70mm lens, which means I'm not digitally cropping into anything. I'm genuinely switching over to a high quality lens with a big sensor on a drone flying in the sky. Now, that lens has a 48 megapixel and it's using the 1/1.3-inch sensor, and it has a fixed aperture of f2.8. So it's not as bright as the 24mm lens. I didn't find I was having any issues, and we were starting to get into some pretty low light situations while we were shooting out there. And DJI's actually added a ton of safety features, which we'll get into later, that is even better in low light. Even against my professional full frame cameras, and can I mention those cameras don't have wings, so like they can't fly. So it's super cool to see the amount of technology now that's packed into these drones. One thing I noticed right away upgrading to this drone was the omnidirectional object sensing that it has is significantly better than my previous drone experience. So I did genuinely feel a lot safer knowing that if I was flying sideways or backwards, that this thing is protected. As well, this is the first DJI drone that's equipped with forward-facing LiDAR detection. So what does this actually mean? Well, if you are flying in lower light conditions, it's using LiDAR and it can sense things that you may not be able to see. So if there's not a high contrast object, or potentially it's flying towards something like glass that you can't really see, that forward-facing LiDAR is going to have a better chance of detecting that object that it can't maybe see with its cameras and be able to move around it. So that's a pretty cool new piece of tech that they've put into this drone specifically. So coming from my previous Mini 3 Pro, it really only had the forward sensing object detection and it didn't have the LiDAR. In the Fly More combo, you get the 3 batteries, and I also have the RC2 remote controller that now has the antennas on it. So now we have a 20-kilometer transmitting range between the remote and the drone, and this was super impressive. I didn't notice any cutting out with mountains and trees. With these Porsches, we were moving from location to location, so having that 20K transmission feed was critical for me to really trust that the connection from the remote and to the drone was going to be strong. And honestly, I didn't notice any dropouts. I felt really confident. And this also leads to the next generation of return to home features that this drone has. Now the DJI Air 3S can do a return to home feature where essentially it builds the map of where it flew previously and uses that map to get home. Typically it needs to connect to a satellite so that it can track its way home, but now it doesn't really need that satellite connection. Now there's already been a ton of really great return to home features built into the DJI drones, but now with its ability to see better in low light, that forward-facing LiDAR detection, and with the ability for the drone to use its pre-built directions to get back home, this is just one more reason why these drones are getting safer and safer and easier for us to use them. The DJI Air 3S has a 45-minute battery life in optimal conditions, and in my conditions it wasn't necessarily optimal. I was flying in sport mode at times. I was trying to keep up with Porsches, so I was flying a little bit faster and harder than maybe those batteries would live in optimal. So I still had incredible battery life, and I love the feature that if all your batteries are stacked in there, they will put all the power from all 2 batteries into 1 remaining battery, which can get you an extra flight, which is actually huge when you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere and you just want to get that extra flight in. It's a really smart feature, which I really appreciate. And you can also use this as a power bank if you need to charge your phone if you're out in the middle of nowhere and didn't bring a phone charger with you. DJI was kind enough to send me the Fly More package. So in there we get the drone itself, the Air 3S, we have the RC2 remote controller, we get the 3 battery pack, which is amazing, as well as a set of ND filters and extra propellers. The bag itself is also pretty good quality, easy enough to throw over your shoulder and not too big. And I could see myself using it and putting other cameras in as well if I'm not bringing the drone along. As I mentioned, the previous drone that I purchased was the DJI Mini 3 Pro. And I purchased that drone because at the time I was doing a lot of social media content, and for the ability to flip that camera vertically was really clutch, honestly. But if I were to purchase a drone now, I personally was looking at the Air 3, but this kind of now sits in that perfect slot where you've upgraded the sensor. You still can get 2.7K vertical footage. You have all of the smart tracking features that you would ever want from any of these DJI drones. And you might be looking to step into, say, a higher tier of drones like the Mavic Pro series, is that you have the ability with those drones to change your aperture. So you can have a variable aperture to help set exposure properly. Unfortunately, for this drone, you still have those set aperture points at 1.8 on the 24mm and 2.8 on the 70mm. Now, there's workarounds with this. You can get those ND filters and you can still set your shutter speed manually and have perfect exposure. It's just a little bit more work to get there. And of course, DJI is a company that needs to tier their products. So unfortunately, if you need to have that variable aperture, you're gonna have to step up into that Mavic Pro series. I think for a lot of consumers and people that are just flying drones for fun, or people like me that are doing social media content, or even some professional work, the Air 3S sits in a really great price point that you can still get all that professional work, all that fun consumer drone stuff, all the safety that you'd ever need for a really good bundled price. I want to say a huge thank you to DJI for sponsoring this video and for sending me the DJI Air 3S. As someone who's been making videos for a lot of years, and I've flown drones from the Phantom 4 to the Mavics to the Minis to now the Air 3S. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. If you guys are looking at this drone and you are interested in it, take a look at the links down below. Obviously, you know where to find it. And I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know any questions you have down in the comments. You might like that video there, and I really do hope I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.